Brett McMurphy of the Action Network puts out an article that will absolutely could absolutely rock the college football world, and especially could rock Florida State and even Clemson fans, as he has kind of confirmed some things that Greg Pflugar has been saying over on College Football's Pick Around the Corner for several weeks now. What is up? Welcome in to this live edition of Couz's Corner. This is take 2 of this live edition today. I tried to do this live stream this morning earlier, but right after the news broke, but I had really bad internet service where I was at. As you can see, I'm not in my normal studio. I'm having to kind of compromise here and do this. I'm actually on vacation with my family this week. Did not bring my equipment other than my phone and some earbuds because I wasn't prepared to do this. I did not expect this news to drop this week while I was on vacation. But here we are. So I decided to bring you guys this quick live stream. But basically, for those of you who watch Greg Pflugar, you know this. If you don't watch him, then you may not. But he's been saying for several weeks now that the Big Ten and the SEC have cooled on adding Florida State and Clemson. That those may not be options for those two schools. And he's been driving home the point of relationships matter. Relationships matter. And I think this article by Brett McMurphy really drives that point home. And since Brett put his article out this morning, which I will talk about the article in more detail in a minute, but since Brett put his article out, someone by the name of Matt Hayes, who writes for Saturday Down South, put out a tweet as well, and I'm paraphrasing. I can't do screen shares today because I'm using my phone, so I'm having to just paraphrase some things. And I do have some notes written down here, but I'm paraphrasing some things and just kind of giving some bullet points and some quotes. But Matt Hayes basically said his sources in the Big Ten are telling him that, hey, whoever's advising Florida State, they're not doing a very good job. They're doing them a disservice, is the word he used. Because the way Florida State is handling this whole situation with the ACC is not sitting well with a lot of people. And it's not sitting well with people who are making decisions in regards to conference realignment. So again, back to Greg's big point he's been making, relationships matter. And it looks like Florida State may be burning some bridges in regards to relationships. They may have a lot of fences to mend here, but there may not be enough time to mend those fences before they are ready to move conferences or, ready to get out of the ACC, which, they were ready to get out of the ACC yesterday. But we all know, ACC is taking the ACC to court. They've went as far as to even have the state attorney general of the state of Florida has sued the ACC and I think even ESPN. They're wanting to make the details of the TV deal public, which all Power 4 conferences are frowning on. They do not want those types of deals leaked. Those are confidential business deals that are done between entities that do not need to be leaked to the public. They don't like it. They don't like the way Florida State has been so loud. They don't like the way they've been so so forward about this. These types of things are typically done behind closed doors. They're typically done quietly. They're typically done in a professional manner. They're not done out in the open. They're not done publicly, and they're not done with all these massive lawsuits. Yes, there have been lawsuits in the past between teams and conferences, but it was never this contentious, I guess, for the lack of a better term, is never this open, never this public. And I think that's really what's not sitting well with people. But just looking at Brett McMurphy's article, and before we get into that, though, before I forget, I do have to give a shout out to my channel sponsor real quick. So give me about 40 seconds to do that, and I will be right back.
Since 1931, the attorneys at Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner have been the voice for victims who have suffered serious injury or death. They have a fierce passion for truth and justice and a sincere compassion for those who have been wronged by others. Whether you have been in a car accident or fighting with an insurance company, or you or a loved one has suffered serious injury or death due to medical negligence, we will ensure your voice is heard loud and clear. Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner will ensure there is justice for all West Virginians because we are your lawyer, your voice. Visit us at yourlawyeryourvoice.com.
And a little side nugget, Katz, Cantor, Stone Street, and Buckner are also licensed in the state of Virginia. So if you need an attorney for medical malpractice or for, an accident on the job or a car accident, whatever, reach out to them if you're in one of those two states. Now, let's get down to the nuts and bolts here and talk about Brett McMurphy's article, which, again, I'm linking to in the description so you can actually read this article for yourself. I'm just going to go over a few quotes that I thought really hit home and drove the point home. But he basically just starts out by saying Florida State may not have a home in the Big Ten or SEC. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but one of his sources, he talked to multiple sources throughout the SEC and the Big Ten, including school presidents in most cases, and a lot of people in leadership positions. But he says one of his sources said there's just no appetite for expansion right now for the SEC, especially if this is for the SEC side. There's no appetite for expansion. One of his sources in the SEC said that FSU has shown, quote, it's not a good partner, end quote. Again, back to the quote by Matt Hayes from Saturdays Down South. Whoever's advising them is doing a disservice. They're not showing to be a good partner in these leagues. If you're the Big Ten, think about it. If you're the Big Ten or the SEC and you're already sitting at the mountaintop, basically, of college athletics, you're the most competitive conferences. You're the conference winning most of the national titles, and you're making the most money by a landslide over the other two Power Four conferences and all other conferences. Why in the world would you need to bring in a team who's going to cause chaos, disruption, might sue you down the road, if things don't go the way they want to, who might try to come in and demand things, whatever. And I know there's irony in that, right? Because the SEC just added Texas. Go back to my friend John Kurtz, who's a friend of the show, another fellow Big 12 creator, put something out this morning. It's kind of funny how they allow Texas in, who's basically been known historically to do the same things. But let's face it, Florida State's not Texas. Florida State's an extremely valuable brand, one of the most valuable brands in the country. Behind Notre Dame, probably the most valuable brand left that's not in the Power 2, and even more valuable than some in the Power 2, let's face it. But they're not Texas. And Texas at least didn't, when they were looking to move to the Big 12, they didn't go out publicly and sue the Big 12 to get out of the league. They didn't make all these public statements about the Big 12. They didn't file lawsuits. Their state didn't file lawsuits against the Big 12 or ESPN or Fox or anybody. You know what I'm saying? It's just the way the Florida State is handling this is not incumbent upon a university of their magnitude and of their standing to these college presidents. They don't want to deal with this mess. And if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, why do it? You don't need to. You can be extremely methodical, extremely picky, so to speak, on who you bring into your league now, because you don't even need to expand. You're valuable enough. You don't need to expand unless it's a team like, I don't know, maybe a Notre Dame. Now, there are other teams that might be at the top of these conferences lists outside of Notre Dame, which I'll get to in a minute. But we all know Notre Dame, they're already even included in the Big 12 or the Big 10 deal. There's an open invitation for them, right? We all know that. But and that's, when if you get a chance to get them, why bring in a team like Florida State who's just going to cause disruption and chaos? That might even turn Notre Dame away. Notre Dame may not even want to be a part of that, right? I'm sure Notre Dame's not real happy with. I haven't heard this. This is just my opinion. I doubt Notre Dame's real happy with the way Florida State's handling the situation. I would think, because Notre Dame doesn't typically conduct themselves in that manner. I'm not a Notre Dame fan by any means. I don't even like Notre Dame, but they historically have not done things this way. Now, Brett McMurphy also had his sources that said he said he'd had 3 different SEC presidents tell him they had zero interest in adding Florida State. Now, in order for them to expand, 12 of 16 presidents would have to approve. Now, if those 3 are the only 3 who don't, they would still have enough numbers. But he didn't talk to every single school president, I don't think, in the SEC. So if 3 that he did talk to said that, you've got to imagine that there are more than that in that conference who probably don't want to deal with Florida State and their crap, for lack of a better term. Right? So, again, it looks like the SEC, and we go back to the words of Greg Sankey yesterday at SEC Media Days. He even made a point in his comments, and Greg Sankey is careful what he says. He made a point in his comments to mention how there's an agreement in place for these conferences. Teams don't seem to be happy with those agreements and are trying to sue their way out of it. He doesn't seem real happy about that. And even said he doesn't want to cause chaos for his colleague, Jim Phillips. So it doesn't look like there's an appetite for the SEC to expand with Florida State right now. And obviously, Clemson, who was expected to be kind of a +1 with Florida State, likely may not come either. Now, Doesn't mean Clemson still can't go to the SEC even if Florida State doesn't. And heck, this is not to say things can't even change. Maybe down the road, SEC changes their mind on Florida State. Who knows? But as of right now, that seems to be, I don't want to say off the table, but it doesn't seem to be likely that they're going to go to the SEC. Now, let's move over to the Big Ten picture. There have been a lot of people on social media who Brett actually called out in this article, by the way. Again, very good article by Brett McMurphy. Go read it. It's in the description. Links in the description. But despite what people on social media are saying, there is not a definite spot in the Big Ten for Florida State. There's not. As much as people want to say that, it's not a done deal. It's not signed, sealed, delivered. At this point, it may not even be likely. So people are saying that are wrong. And here are some of the reasons. One of the sources in the Big Ten told Brett that Tony Petitti, the new commissioner, wants to stay away from expansion, and we are following his lead. That's one source. Another one of Brett's sources said, why would anyone want to expedite more chaos by adding Florida State? Another source said, never say never, and then they went on to talk about how if the ACC only loses Florida State and Clemson, then they likely aren't. Then they're not adding them. Basically, that's what he said. Now, if the ACC blows up and more than just those two teams leave, then there might be more of a chance. That's kind of what this one source said. Now, and we all know that's still an option. There is a chance, as Brett McMurphy put it in an interview with 365 Sports not long ago, we could see a conga line out the door of the ACC if Florida State and Clemson do get out. If that happens and the conference blows up, basically, then maybe the Big Ten reevaluates things. But as of now, the way it sits, if it's just Florida State and Clemson, not happening. Now, also, if the ACC implodes, adding Florida State and adding Clemson still may not happen for this reason. UNC and UVA. The University of North Carolina and University of Virginia would both, according to a source that Brett talked to, would both be highly sought after by both the SEC and the Big Ten. Now, we all know the Big Ten's top target's Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame may bring along Stanford. We've heard reports of that. I talked about that on a previous show. They could decide to bring along UNC. They could decide to bring along a UVA. We don't know. But nonetheless, UVA and UNC seem to be higher on the Big Ten and SEC's expansion list than Florida State and Clemson. And I know Florida State and Clemson fans don't want to hear that. And it doesn't mean those two schools are more valuable than Florida State. It doesn't mean that at all. But when you look at the fact that Florida State's causing all this disruption, burning bridges with relationships potentially, making school presidents and conference commissioners not want to do business with them, right? UNC and UVA haven't done that, right? And we've heard for months we've heard from multiple reporters for over a year now that UNC is really high on the list for both these conferences because they're in the state of North Carolina, a very fast-growing state. It will soon be it's already like one of the top 10 biggest states in the country, and it's growing at a rapid rate. They want to be in that state. They're a flagship institution. They have a high academic. They're AAU, which I'll get to in a minute. UVA could be a +1 for UNC potentially. They also are AAU. They're also a very high academic school. And both of those brands give you a good value in basketball. Now, look, does the SEC really need to improve their football brand value? Do they? They already have Texas, Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Auburn, LSU. Do they really need Florida State and Clemson? But it was brought to my attention by watching another podcast not long ago that when Greg Sankey took the job, and listen, I didn't hear this out of my own ears. This came from another podcaster, but if you're an SEC fan watching this, maybe you can confirm it in the comments. But Greg Sankey wants to improve basketball and other sports in the SEC, not just football. Now, he's done that. Their baseball's been really good. Their basketball has now improved. You look how good Alabama has gotten. Auburn has gotten. Tennessee's a good basketball program. That's just three to name a few. Bringing in North Carolina and Virginia would make them an even better basketball conference. And if you're the Big Ten, same thing. You already have Ohio State, Michigan, USC, Washington, Oregon, Wisconsin, Michigan State. Do you really need Iowa? You throw Iowa in there. Do you really need to bring in Florida State and Clemson? You don't really need them. It might be nice to have them, but you don't need them. But if you bring in a UNC and a UVA, you improve other aspects of your league outside of just football. Now, I'm going to get to the Big 12 part of that in just a moment. I know a lot of you are anxious to hear about that. That's coming, so bear with me. The AAU part of it, several sources or some sources told Brett McMurphy that even though AAU is not a requirement to get into the Big Ten, it is a preference. Okay? They want AAU schools, and I know a lot of people think that's a farce, and I do think AAU, there's a lot of politics involved in AAU. Notre Dame recently became an AAU member. They do very little research. Okay? There's a lot of politics involved in it, but it does matter to the school presidents. They want AAU schools if possible. UVA and UNC both check that box. There are two schools who do not. That's Clemson and Florida State. Yes, Florida State has improved their academics research. They've made great strides in that, but they're still not AAU yet. So as of now, it looks like the Big Ten is not interested. Now, the Big 12, where do they come into play? All right, now we've heard reports. We saw Jason Shear tweet out the other day that, first of all, a couple weeks ago, we saw Ross Dellinger come out and say there have been third-party talks with the Big 12 and Florida State and Clemson, right? We've heard Greg Flugar mention on his show even before that there have been third-party talks. Third-party talks, that, it may mean something, it may not. They probably have third-party talks with everybody at this point, right? Those are the talks that are going on behind the scenes. That the conference commissioner is not directly involved in it. It's third parties, behind the scenes people talking with other behind the scenes people that they have relationships with, saying, hey, what are the chances of this happening, right? Those are third-party talks, nothing official. Well, now we have Jason Shear, who was all over the Four Corner Schools for the Pac-12 story last summer, who is with Wildcat Authority, which is the Arizona arm of 24/7 Sports, is very well connected, coming out with a tweet yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago now, I guess, saying there is belief within the Big 12, and I'm paraphrasing, but there's belief within the Big 12 that Florida State and Clemson will be a member of the league within a year or so. That's what Jason said. Now, that got everybody a buzz. It's got people saying Jason sure don't know what he's talking about. They're questioning his journalistic integrity, all this crap, because they don't believe what he's saying, because it don't fit their agenda, okay? Look at Jason's track record. He's been right a lot of times, a lot more than he's been wrong. He is connected. He does have a school that's now a member, not an official member of the Big 12, but nonetheless they're in the Big 12. And he covers that team. He has sources, just like most reporters do. And Jason seems to have a lot and really good ones. Now, that caused a stir. And then now today, we see Brett McMurphy come out with this article. To me, this confirms what Jason has been saying. Heck, it even confirms some of what Greg Swain has been saying, a person that a lot of people throw shade at, that say don't believe what he says. He throws things against the wall, whatever. Greg Swain has been saying some of these same things, maybe to a different degree, but he's been saying some of the same things too. It looks like he's turning out he might be on to something as well. Greg Flugar's been on this story from the get-go. Yes, he's had to backtrack a couple times, change some of the information he received, because his sources changed what they were telling him. Because sometimes that's how the business works. Sometimes you get stuff from sources, it turns out not to be accurate. That's what happened in Greg's case. But now he's saying, hey, look, I was wrong. Florida State and Clemson are not a lock to the Big Ten. As a matter of fact, now it could be the opposite. And bingo, what does Brett McMurphy say? Likely not going to happen. And it's not all, but mainly because Florida State is making too much noise. And as far as the Big 12, back to the Big 12 piece, why would the Big 12 be a good fit? Well, while the Big 10 and SEC are sitting in the catbird seat and are in a good spot and don't need to add any teams, the Big 12 is not quite in that position. They're way behind in revenue to those two leagues. They're not as competitive on the field as those two leagues. They're as competitive on the basketball court, but not on the football field. So they need to do some things They need to think outside the box. They need to be different. Beggars can't be choosers, as they say. Well, the Big 12, if they get a chance to have Florida State, in my opinion, they're not in a position to say no. They need to do it. Yes, they might come in with a little bit of a complex. They might be a little bit like Texas. But I think if you're the Big 12, you have to take that chance. If you want to compete with the quote-unquote big dogs, if you want to compete with the P2, you need a team like Florida State in your conference. You just lost your two biggest brands in Oklahoma and Texas. If you can bring in a Florida State and a Clemson to replace them, you may not have replaced them equally, but you're darn close. And it gets you much closer to the SEC and the Big Ten than you are right now. Much closer. And one thing I hadn't thought about, but a caller on the Greg Flugar show the other day said something that really got my attention. He said, the Big 12 deal, the new deal that they got, the extension they got with the ESPN and Fox after adding the four G5 schools or three G5s in BYU a couple years ago, that deal they got, that extension, it hasn't officially went into effect yet. It actually doesn't start until next year. So is it possible, and I don't know the answer to this question, but is it possible that that deal could be renegotiated? If they are able to go out and get Florida State and Clemson, would ESPN and would Fox be willing to sit down at the negotiation table with the Big 12 and renegotiate that deal now? That's something interesting to think about, and that's very possible. And also, let's think about this. What if the Big 12 goes out and gets private equity money? I've talked about this in previous shows. We've heard rumors that Big 12 is looking at private equity. Brett Yormark has said, hey, yes, we're kicking the tires on everything. We're looking at all options. If they bring in private equity, they could help buy Florida State and Clemson's way out of the ACC, potentially give Florida State and Clemson, maybe give them a quote-unquote signing bonus like they did Colorado to get them into the league. There are a lot of ways you could do this thing. No, I don't know that the private equity piece, I'm not as confident in that happening. Like Veritax is saying in the chat, he doesn't think it's doable. I think it's doable, but I'm not sure it makes sense because based on what Ross Dellinger has said, in order for the private equity to work for the Big 12, they would need to sign an extended grant of rights for maybe another 10 to 15 years. A lot of presidents are pushing back on that, and why would they not? That's one of the reasons the ACC is in the situation they're in today. As fast as things are moving in college athletics, as big as these TV agreements have gotten, you do not want to lock yourself into a long-term deal that may get you further and further behind. You could end up like the ACC is. Not stable. You don't want that. So not sure private equity is the answer, but there are some other ways, in my opinion, that they can make it work. Number one, we heard Yormark talk at Big 12 Media Days about a FAST network, and I don't remember what that stands for. It's basically a streaming service that gets paid for by ads, right? It's like watching cable TV, but it's on a streaming service, essentially, for just to sum up what it means. I think Tubi is an example of one. He's trying to get the Big 12 maybe on some of those types of services. Maybe you get money there. And there's pro rata money potentially from the ESPN and Fox. And yes, the pro rata money, even if you get full pro rata from ESPN and Fox without renegotiating the deal, that's what, 31.6 million a year, something like that. That's not going to move the needle for Florida State or Clemson. But what might move the needle is, what if you get a third network involved? Like, I don't know, TNT, Warner Brothers, who owns TNT, what if they get involved? TNT may be losing out on the NBA deal. If they do, they might be looking for something to replace that. If the Big 12, the timing could be perfect here. What if the Big 12 is able to get a commitment from Florida State and Clemson or other ACC schools potentially? Once they get out of the ACC, obviously, can't be doing it before they get out of that deal, right? Because then you're risking a lawsuit of your own. But what if they are able to nab Florida State, Clemson, and some other ACC schools? They go out and get a third-party network to add more of the games. Thank you, Tim Fitzgerald. He chimes in and says FAST stands for Free Advertising Supported Television, or what we olds used to call TV. Yeah, Tim Fitzgerald, who's, by the way, is watching over on X. And if you're watching on X, guys, if you want to check out my previous content, my older content, come to my YouTube channel where you can watch all my on-demand stuff and past live streams that I've done, and subscribe to me over there. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers, but I appreciate everybody tuning in, whether you're on X or on YouTube. Thanks for watching the show. For those of you who might be new here, you can see I'm not in my normal studio. I'm having to use my earbuds today. I'm on vacation with family. Did not come prepared to do a show, so I'm compromising and using my phone and some earbuds. But anyway, back to the topic at hand. The Big Ten could bring in a third media partner, potentially like a TNT or somebody else, and maybe add more money to the pot, so to speak, to help sweeten the deal for Florida State and Clemson. And here's another thing that I've not heard anybody talk about yet that I've thought about. We all know the Big 12 has a really good relationship with Endeavor, right? Endeavor helped them out. They were a consultant for them during the Four Corners situation when they were trying to add Four Corner schools. Guess who Endeavor's sister company is? TKO Holdings. TKO Holdings owns WWE now. They are the majority shareholder in WWE. WWE just signed a really lucrative deal with Netflix to begin in 2025 to stream their Monday Night Raw. The Big 12 also has a close relationship with the WWE. Look at this partnership opportunity here. Why is there not an opportunity there for maybe the Big 12 to go to Netflix and say, hey, we might have an opportunity to get some more schools in our conference. ESPN and Fox either can't or aren't willing to pay for the additional content. Would you guys be willing to step up and add some Big 12 games to Netflix in order for us and throw some money to it at the deal as well for us to sweeten the pot to bring some of these ACC schools into our league, these former ACC schools at that point? Would you be able to bring them into our league? It's I don't know why more people hasn't put those puzzle pieces together. WWE, TKO, Endeavor, Big 12. There are relationships weaved throughout that whole deal there. Why not take advantage of it? Brett Yormark seems to have a really good relationship with Endeavor and the folks over there. He seems to have a really good relationship with the WWE. Again, it all makes sense to me. It all makes sense to me now. Why not leverage that relationship to try to get on? We all know everything's going to streaming direction of streaming anyways. Go ahead, man. Get Netflix to the table. Let them sweeten the pot. And I know a lot of people don't like Netflix because of their political views. I don't like everything they stand for either, man. But I want to watch my college football team play, and I want them to make as much money as they can because I want them to compete for championships. And if we're going to have to deal with some things we don't like, whether it's political agendas, whatever. We're not going to be able to escape the wokeness and stuff that people don't like. We can't get away from that. It's in the world we live in now. We might as well deal with it. Almost every company we buy brands from, almost everything we watch on television is owned by some company who is driven or backed by someone who's quote unquote woke. We got to forget about that crap, man. Now, I understand if you are that serious about it, you want to quit watching it, that's your prerogative. Me personally, I'm going to continue to watch my Mountaineers. I don't care if they're on Netflix. I don't care if they're on CBS, ESPN, Fox. I don't care. And ESPN has basically the same agenda anyway. So, I mean, what's the difference? You know what I'm saying? So we got to get past all the political mess, in my opinion, whether you agree with it or don't agree with it. Chase Strickland says, I am woke. That's cool, man. I try to find middle ground with everybody. At some point, we can all agree on some things. That's what we need to focus on, is what we agree on, not what we disagree on. But I don't want to get on politics. At the end of the day, thank you, Tim Fitzgerald. He says, absolutely. Subscribe to Couz's YouTube channel. He kills it. Thank you, Tim. I appreciate the love, my man. And by the way, Tim hosts his own show called Go Power Cat. Go check out that channel as well. He covers Kansas State for 24/7 Sports. Great content over there. And he has some co-hosts over there as well that do some good stuff. Big 12 Insiders. Go check them out. But anyway, let's see if I've got any comments here from any VIP members or any super chats. So long story short, I would love to see FSU and Clemson in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is not in a position to where they can say no to a school, to brands like that. They need those kind of brands in their league to add more revenue and to strengthen it. But anyway, Chief Fan says, will FSU announce by August 15th they're leaving the ACC? It's very possible. Chief Fan, I don't know the answer to that question. There are some rumors out there that they will. As fast as things seem to be moving now, I would not be shocked if that happens. But again, I'm not going to predict it because I don't know the answer. But listen, guys, I don't have a whole lot of time. Like I said, I'm on my vacation with family. The rest of my family has already went down to the beach to enjoy the sunshine and the sand and the awesome Gulf Coast water. I need to get down there with them, but I wanted to bring you this content. I want to give a shout out for those who have joined the chat: Chief Fan, Jim Pearson, Chase Strickland, Cinnamon 06, WVU Mountaineer with Kenny. Obviously, I mentioned Tim Fitzgerald. I've got Drumwolf 62 in the house. Veritax, thank you for joining. He did mention a few channels who were considered fast, free. Tim told us what it stood for. I can't never remember these. Free advertising supported television. Veritex gave us a list of some of those. Tubi, Pluto, Freevee, which is seen on Amazon Prime, are all, and Slingbox, are all examples of fast, free ad-supported television. We've got, let's see who else we got in the house today. We got Junior. Sorry, guys, I'm on this phone. This makes this tricky. Jay McClanahan. Patrick's in the house. Brandon Kinsley. J Math 1978. Justin Cook. There was another one here I didn't want to miss. Junior F. Josh. I'm sure Yormark can negotiate more money per school from ESPN, Fox, FSU, and Clemson in the conference. Yeah. Brett Yormark, guys, is extremely aggressive. He's an extreme outside-the-box thinker. He's going to do everything in his power to get the Big 12. You heard him the other day at Media Days. I'm not going to stop until I make sure the Big 12 is the top conference in the country. Now, will he ever make it the top conference? Probably not. But by gosh, he's going to do everything in his power to try. And if bringing in Florida State and Clemson help that, and what that could do is lead to the Big 12 adding even more teams. Some that have been mentioned even by Jason Shearer and others are Louisville. Louisville seems to be, Jason even hinted that he's got some stuff coming out about Louisville maybe in a few days. So Louisville could potentially jump over. A team like NC State seems to be on Brett Yormark's list, according to Jason. We've heard Miami mentioned. So again, this stuff is not over. The rumors, the speculation, the people arguing on Twitter. I've been arguing with people on X for 2 days now. I'm going to try to quit doing that. It's just a waste of time and sucking my energy. But people just we all get in our own little boxes and want to argue from our point of view, and I get that. That's human nature. But man, sometimes you've got to look at the people who've reported stories in the past that have been accurate. Those are the people you need to trust. You know what I'm saying? The people's like the Jason Shears, the Brett McMurphys, the Ross Dellingers of the world. I'll even throw Greg Flugar into that mix. They have been right more than they've been wrong. Those are the people you need to pay attention to. If they put something out, you need to pay attention to it. Okay? I'm going to leave you with that. I think, make sure I don't have any super chats left. Again, if you don't know what a super chat is, if you want to leave a comment, make sure it gets highlighted. Make sure I read it. It highlights it for me. You drop a little donation with a $sign and leave your comment in the chat box, and I'll be sure to read it on the air. But whether it's a question or a comment. SC Archer says, go get to the beach, Couz. Charles Peterson says, thanks for doing this while on holiday. And Chief Fan says, have fun at the beach. Hot and humid here in West Virginia. Yeah, it's hot and humid in Florida too. Well, I'm jumping off here, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Have a top shelf day. Go Big 12 and Q Country Roads.